Hello, 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 hello. Happy turnaround Tuesday, everyone. How is everyone doing this morning? By the way, did anybody see the Red Book numbers? If anybody saw them, could you put them in the chat? They're supposed to come out about 9 minutes ago, and I haven't seen them yet. I'm just curious. Let's see who's here. Jacob, good morning. Yeah, well, the double is still in play for AMD. So I'm still expecting, based off probabilities, for a lower push once we get some kind of market breakdown. I did actually look at AMD this morning. It's still holding in the horizontal channel after hitting the first target. Good morning, Patrick. Good morning, Jake. Good morning, Anissa. Good morning, Royal Palms. Aloha, options 22. Aloha. Are you in Hawaii? Options 22. Good morning, Tony. All right. Good morning, Heinrich. Thank you, everybody. I like that morning eighting. I like the morning eighting. I like that. Probably a typo, but I still like it. Keeps me on my toes. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Wow, we got a one-day bounce yesterday, and then we are so far revisiting some key lows. We'll go through. Hey, good afternoon, Eric. Thank you for tuning in. All right, we've had Harker and Sparkin speaking. I'm not going to review everything there, but it was like still soft landing, blah, blah, blah. PCE back down to 2% by 2025. Yay. All right, we had the NFIB optimism index coming in slightly lower, between the consensus and forecast, slightly lower than forecast, but that's minor. I did not see, thanks, Heinrich. I did not see the red book numbers. I was really curious to see if they dropped back into contraction. So again, if somebody has those, please put them up. That's really about it. Quiet day tomorrow. I mean, crude pulling back. Weak numbers out of China. The export data was the stuff import stuff from China, and our trade with China is starting to fall off a cliff. It's going to get interesting. So far, well, besides Lilly, which is holding up healthcare with the 9% today, you see everything's red. Oil pulling back after testing key resistance. By the way, the podcast did drop, so the key resistance still holding that we've discussed on the podcast with crude. Wish that came out a little quicker because it seems, I mean, we talk about some longer term stuff, but it's actionable stuff. You see financials starting to pull back. UPS had a beat on EPS. Remember, between EPS and revenue, pay more attention to the revenue side. UPS missed on revenue. You can really fudge EPS. You can't fudge revenue. Revenues, the money is coming in the door. UPS, pretty big gap down on that. What else we see? You see healthcare with led by Lilly is the only thing up. Everything else negative so far. Fed watch tool pretty much just pause with a cut in March. Nothing's changed there. Fear and greed still in greed mode. If these lows break, I'm expecting a much bigger pullback there. I'd also keep an eye on the Magnificent Seven. Palantir was a miss yesterday. Holt trading right at key support. UPS, as I already talked about, Lilly was obviously a beat with their results up huge this morning. After the close, we got Rivian, AMC. Tomorrow we got Roblox, Sony, and then after the close tomorrow, Disney. So that's where that sits. But we're still a fair amount of companies reporting, but more important, this UPS with the revenue miss and the potential shipping slowdown, more stating where the economy could be going. So pay attention to that. Hey, Christoph. Oh, thanks, Christoph. Particularly the oil part. I hope it's not just that we're, from my charting perspective, I like to try to relay other information that can be used in markets to get people to think about things. That's the whole point of even doing this still trying to hang in there, doing it on a daily basis. It's trying to share this information so you can learn, so maybe you can look at things slightly differently. That's really the goal of this. So AA released the number early this morning for AMC. Oh, did they? All right, I didn't see that. Well, I'm just put it in here. I did not see that. I don't really give a crap about AMC. Besides, at some point, it's going to go into reorg. Rotation zones preparing to cross on the daily. Apple and Tesla weekly. Just need Amazon gap fill and watch out. Thank you. Wish it wasn't a week old. I'm not in charge of the editing, so Amazon, keep an eye on this. We'll get to the market, but this is also key because Amazon, that is a 1 hour double. So you get a 1 hour close below 138.96. We can start seeing a partial pullback. And I have the shorter side targets on there. Why? Because it's back into the major support zone, but that's going back to the major breakout zone. But that could start something. And now with the Amazon, even with their earnings, their PDE, even with their beat, it's still trading at 110. I mean, they'd have to keep these numbers up for a while, and if we're going into more of an economic slowdown, their AWS and stuff will also slow down. So do keep an eye on that. Just real quick, you AMD, nothing here has invalidated the pattern. So if I had to bet, yeah, we got a sideways channel. But if I'd had to bet, I'd be betting on the rollover play. Why? Because the numbers are still insane for AMD. The numbers are still insane. I haven't even seen the PE ratio right now. But it's off the charts. And if there even still is a PE based off their earnings, what were their earnings? I mean, these weren't, they beat, but it was not out of the park beat for where it is. I'm expecting the rollover play. Back to the main markets. Remember, on the way up, when you get 1 day pausing areas or the way down. So I'm really paying attention to Friday's lows. They have not broken yet, but if they break with weak market internals, I'd recommend jumping straight to the tick. Or if they break with major momentum bars, my key target is between about 44.60 and about 44.50 as the first initial target. That's what I'm watching. The next bigger target would be on a close. Well, the 44.60, what is that? 44.68 on a closing basis, and then if we close below that, back to 4,400. Now, shorter than that, no, this is not a double, but the only thing that gets me short-term bullish, unless we get momentum bars, the upside. And when I say short-term bullish, we can chop, if we do not break these lows, we can chop between here and about 45.45. And that's only short-term plays. It's got to get back above 45.45 before I'm interested in anything more than a very short-term play on the S&P. So, thoughts on Google? We'll jump back to Google. AMC, thanks. Oof. So, slight beat on revenue. Oh, they couldn't even fudge the and a slight beat on EPS. So I wonder, is that a gap up for the apes? Yeah, because boy. Iowa don't need to go in AMD. NASDAQ also did break below Friday's lows, but bouncing back above it. So keep watching Friday's lows. We break below that intermediate target, 15,250. More significant target, 15,160 area, 15,120 to 15,160. And we'll be breaking down below the retreating channel to the upside. I'm still utilizing this 15,555 area. Anywhere in there is still just choppy short-term trade. That's the only thing that gets me into a clear path move that I'd be watching for a slightly more bullish case. Other than that, you see we have a quad bottom here. So if this starts breaking, this is where this 15,250, then 15,158. And as noted, The rotation zones have flattened out. We got the close below them last week. The rotation zones are flattening out. That does not, we don't trade off across the rotation zones, but things are definitely going to be shifting. So if this does cross, it starts meaning, gets more aggressive on looking for short setups on any rallies. Again, you don't just, why? Because it's better, I found, than to try to trade crossovers. Just utilize it as a sign. For example, we broke out here. We got the crossover. So we're on pullbacks. We're looking for more aggressive buys. Buy, 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 buy. Even this buy, and then it couldn't make new highs. Now it's getting sideways with a flagging pattern, but this is going to be. This starts going, so it doesn't mean just magically sell and the market's going to crash. No, but this starts crossing over, especially when we break down. We watch for the more aggressive sells. That's how I utilize it. Now, the Dow, which was move up, the stop, needed a close above 35,571 yesterday. Did not close above it. Came within a hair of closing above it, or a trade through 35,662. It did not trade through 35,662. Did not close above that, and now turning back down. So a little rush into the Dow yesterday, which was the best performing market yesterday, and then a quickly retreating today. So the Dow also starting to get tired watching for these things to roll over, but it's really got to break below about 34,865 to start getting into more bearish mode. And the key closing area is about 34,568. The Russell broke the most recent support zone. Looks like the rotation zone is also going to roll over here, holding the this is my final key area. We break below there. That broke the last little key closing basis support. Next target area I'd be using is the 1926 to about 1919. And then on a key closing basis, 1904. We closed below 1904. Now, again, I'm giving sort of the bigger picture here, not just for today, because we'll get bounces. But then I'd be watching for a return to 87.5 and probably the 200. So things are definitely shifting. Things are definitely shifting. We asked about Google. Google, the key thing is, did this hit on this one? I don't think this did yet. No. So we have no double on there just yet. Oh, but right about 127.30, 127.30. You start getting below there. And then once you break 126.05, not good for Google. Google slight gap down. Now, if it does push higher, if it can get a bounce, it could get into double top territory, and then we have the gap below. Remember, you still have a major gap magnet below in Google, but Google's still holding up. We already looked at Amazon. Apple, we'll be watching for some kind of minor bounce coming in, but Apple is definitely on a key. Now, they tend to rally a bit into the next they have the September product announcement, but any rally on Apple, I'd be looking for a rollover play. You're getting cycles to the bottom, so we'll not be surprised to see some kind of bounce at Apple coming up, but it would not be an aggressive buy, and Apple finally holding the bottom of the weekly rotation zone. So this would be set up for a minor bounce, and then setting up for a more major topping pattern in Apple. Just a couple others. Microsoft, if it watching for a minor bounce here also, but if it breaks down, the next key support is about 316. And Microsoft, that's right around the bottom of the weekly rotation zone. Again, these are set up for possible bounces, not necessarily today, but then watching for short setups after the bounce. So a lot of these are in weakening condition. You see even here, Microsoft, you had support, support, support. Now we're closing below that support a couple times. And this was the support level I was looking at. You see here, closed below it last Wednesday, closed below it Thursday, even though it was up, closed below it Friday. So it's chipping away. We break, though, Thursday's lows could get not good for Microsoft. Why, even if you're trading the futures, you should keep an eye on some of these Magnificent Seven just from a stock perspective, because they start losing these key supports. You can use that information to help you fine tune your futures positions. Tesla, CFO gone, new one appointed. 241 is still key. Then my next target area below that's 226. Then the major closing basis is 207. Any bounce, 256 to 260 is key resistance. Nvidia still holding up on this sort of flagging pattern, but if it breaks to about 434, I'd be targeting about 418. If you lose 418, it could be over in the short term for Nvidia. Spiders and the Qs, then we'll get to some other stuff like oil. Spiders and the Qs, key support in the spiders is this low, 446.27. We break below that. The harmonic projections lower. So I'd be 444.62. The other support level is about 443.85, and then 442.98 below 44, which is 443. Below 443, it's a quick trip to the 50, and we still have a gap fill left behind. Any bounce play on here? Any bounce play? First off, would be to yesterday's, let's see, what was the open yesterday? 448.71. So my first on any bounce is the opening price yesterday, 448.71. Then the closing price, 450.71. But not real interested unless it can really start getting above this 450.71. 450.71 is the minor bullish case, and then you have the harmonics overhead. So I wouldn't get overly bullish just yet. And the Qs, you have the key support about 372. We start breaking below 372, 370. And yes, we can use the harmonics too. 369.50 to 370. Then about 367. Although you close, remember we have the gap fill still down here. We close below 369, 368.99 to be exact. I'd be watching for the bigger retest of lower prices, and this is where I would focus on the 75, harmonic 365 because it's coming in with the 50, and then 361.39. For any bullish case right now would be yesterday's open, 373.88. Then the close, 375.19 to about 375.63. It has to get above 375. Let me raise that a little, about 375.75 before I can consider any more aggressive bullish plays. The VIX, remember, we just barely closed below this 16 area yesterday, and now we've reversed, so we could be setting up a higher range. I talked about yesterday, we start setting up a higher range, you'll get vol funds starting to buy back in some volatility and sell out some of the stocks. That's why I'm keeping a close eye on this, as we talked about yesterday. So that's definitely rising up. The DAX, still watching for it to retest this 87.5 today, not necessarily today. The notes climbing back up a bit, but the only thing other than we could be setting up a possible trading range in here, the only thing that gets me more bullish on notes and bearish on the yields is still 113.08. You can see the yields retreating, starting to pull back below key support after hitting the 87.5. So we might have put a recent, more significant top in until key inflation. Now, if we start getting inflation numbers rearing back up, then we'll start watching for more aggressive plays in the yields to turn up. But until that, nothing. The 2 years also holding some pretty key support. If that breaks down, we could see a quick return to 4.5 area. To 10 twos, I did put on from a weekly basis. This is a valid weekly double. Last week closed above the weekly. Still, we have some upward targets. By the way, we complete that weekly double. This minus 52.5 on a closing basis is very, very key. Keep that in mind on the 10-2s. Dollar index. Dollar index in potential double top territory, but not near trigger. And that's the only thing now that makes me shift to a short-term bearish mode. We take out 102.45, 102.86, then 103.15 to about 103.28. Would not be surprised to see this tap the 200 again. Crude, yes, this is barely still holding on to a double. But we talked about this. Jim asked on the podcast, could we have a short-term pullback? Well, even before it dropped, the podcast dropped, crude dropped. We came back up. These are the same levels that were on the podcast, reacting here and holding. But if we trigger this double, then I'd be watching for a pullback to the key breakout area. Until that, we're still holding the rotation zone. Gold, still watching for a continued play, especially we have a gap left behind. I'm still watching for this flagging channel to roll over and retest of the 200. What else do we have? The 10 years still holding up, pulling back a little, but holding key support. If it starts breaking down below there, that will ease up a little pressure on the market, and we could see a gap fill in the yields. And in the little short-term basis, with the yen, this is double top territory. So we have a little mini double top within a bigger potential double top. Those are the only things that would shift that on the yen. Right now, euro is finally getting down. Just because we have potential double bottom territory doesn't mean anything. It still has to trigger. It's not even confirmed, and this is going to be a lower probability one, just because of the nature of the structure of it. Other than that, it would need to trigger before I get anything. I'm still watching for a potential breakdown in the euro, especially if the dollar could break out above those most recent highs, and then the euro, my target would be 108.80. Pound, there's nothing right here for the pound. Bitcoin, still in consolidation, trying to bounce a little, but nothing. Nothing, I tell you. So, sorry, getting back to the comments. Lily let's call it, thanks for being here, Rich. Lily, well, their earnings, they crushed it. Look at the revenue numbers. Look at the beat on that revenue. A 9.6% beat on revenue. So, look where that's trading. I was not focused on Lily, but what are the targets from just the harmonics? Let's see. So right now, the next key target would be 510, trading 504. So that would be the next key target area. All right. AI is broken down from daily bear flag, has lost the daily rotation zone and entered the weekly rotation zone. So, yep. And the final line in the sand is about 31.82. 31.82, but this is starting to lose key support, barely closing at the 50 yesterday. But yeah, you start losing this, watch for a return to that 200 area rather quickly in AI. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Again, AMC, thanks for pointing out that I did not check that, but they released early. Thank you, AA. Rivian, so it's really just Rivian after the close, so nothing on Twilio. Super Micro, Upstart, nothing that's going to move the market. Nothing really. I mean, Disney will be interesting after the close on Wednesday. And remember, we got CPI and PPI on Thursday and Friday. CPI Thursday, PPI Friday. So be prepared. It's backloaded this week. Remember to watch these key lows from either last Wednesday or Friday, depending on the market. With that, yeah. No one wants fake meat. That's the final We'll leave it at that. Who wants the fake meat? No one. Thank you, bro, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Have a wonderful trading day. Bye for now.